As the world prepares for Donald Trump's tariff offensive, it is no less than embarrassing that Brexit Britain is still intent on sucking up to Trump. Europe, Canada have united in retaliating.
And because of this collective experience of the last, almost 75 years, so many Europeans feel utterly disheartened by the announcement from the United States. Let me be clear, Europe did not start this confrontation. We think it is wrong. But my message to you today is that we have everything we need to protect our people and our prosperity. We have the largest single market in the world. We have the strength to negotiate. We have the power to push back. And the people of Europe should know that together we will always promote and defend our interests and our values, and together we will always stand up for our Europe.
But this government has decided to continue to suck up to Trump in the hope of getting an American trade deal, a trade deal that actually the majority of the country doesn't want. The much easier route to take is to try and improve on the Brexit reset, to eliminate the Brexit red lines, and to unite with our friends and partners on the European continent, who we actually do the majority of trade with as well. We are completely interlinked. But oh no, Keir Starmer's government are intent on trying to deliver the American trade deal, and they now concede that it will include agricultural products. It will mean us having to accept American food, which we all know is produced to lower standards than we are used to. They also produce a lot of food, so it means that our standards will be undercut, our foods will be undercut, and we will lose more of our self-sufficiency, more of our farms, and this will leave us in a very weak position, having to kowtow to Donald Trump, which is presumably why they're complaining about what they're calling a free speech incident over here, which is actually something to do with an anti-abortion campaigner, which is nothing to do with America. We have our own laws here. And now that we're in Brexit Britain, we're seeing that we have lost sovereignty, because in trying to get a pretty awful deal with America, Donald Trump can intervene.
Bad things in the last decade. You went through the Brexit, which was absolutely nonsensical for the country. And again, if you're a Brexiter in the room, okay. But I'm just telling you, economically, it was against your interest to do that. If we voted here right now, did the Brexit, let's do it by cheers. Can we do it by cheers?
Okay, yeah, whatever you like.
If the Brexit is working for the country, burst into applause. Okay. If the Brexit is not working for the country, let's hear the applause. Okay, not working.
You're right, this totally balanced London audience has spoken.
So you've got austerity, and you've got Brexit going on in the country. And this is a weird thing for me to say, and hopefully you'll get the analogy. Trump is trying to Brexit the United States from the world. Does everybody understand that? With the Doge thing, he's doing something that the UK government has done for 10 years that didn't work. Austerity plus Brexit, no bueno for the average person in the country.
On Radio 4, the Trade Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, was interviewed, and it gives you some idea of how they are defending the indefensible.
The Business and Trade Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds. Good morning to you, Mr. Reynolds.
Good morning, Nick.
That suck it up to Donald Trump didn't work, did it?
Well, we have engaged with the US on the potential for a deal, because that is in the UK's national interest and actually would be mutually beneficial to the US and the UK. Now,
But
I
it's
think
not
that
gonna
is
happen.
the right policy. Look, only the president will himself know exactly what action the US is going to take tomorrow. And you're right to say it might not be possible for any country in the world to be exempted from the initial announcements. But I do believe the work we've done means the UK is in the best possible position of any country to potentially reach an agreement. I do believe UK businesses support our approach. They support the calm-headed approach, the desire to engage, to remain at the table while we can potentially secure an agreement. And that is nothing
you're
other
saying
than
the sucking up goes
pursuing our
on
national
then. You're
interest.
still trying to get a deal. Where Mark Carney is standing up, the new Canadian Prime Minister, to the President, where the EU is going to pick a fight with the President and slap tariffs on American imports to Europe, you're saying, no, we don't want to offend the man. Let's keep going in the hope that we do get a deal eventually.
Nick, standing up for the country, doing a strong response to this, is about pursuing your own national interest. And the UK's national interest is in reaching an agreement. We have things available to us that are not available to other countries. And that's because the existing US-UK trading relationship is a fair and balanced one. The US does not have a significant deficit in traded manufactured goods, which is so much a part of their thinking. It doesn't have that in relation to the UK. So there are things available to us. It's not about sucking up to anyone. It's not about not responding. It's about pursuing our national interest. That is what the government is doing.
So
and whilst there is the chance
then?
of delivering that, I
What's
think
the
that is the
problem?
right approach.
You were in Washington last week for talks. You left negotiators after you left to continue with talks. Let's go through some of the things that were the problem. VAT's a problem, isn't it? He hates it. He thinks it operates in a discriminatory way.
Nick, you are, as ever, an incredibly accomplished interviewer, but you know I'm not going to go through the details of that negotiation. But any negotiation on trade.
What did you, when you were in Washington, we were told, that's what journalists were told to report to the public, it's going well, these talks. Is that what you thought when you were in Washington? Or were you even then thinking, oh, it's not going to happen, this?
I've always been aware of how challenging this agenda is. This is one of the biggest changes in US policy, particularly towards trade, really since the end of the Second World War. So I've always known that, but the talks have been productive. We have talked about goods and services and regulation and how we can not just avoid a negative situation, but actually improve that
normally the
market access.
definition of productive is you get a result, and you haven't got a result. You've got a result that says Britain will suffer tariffs. Now, some people have suggested that the Trump administration, and we know this from J.D. Vance's comments in public, are a bit, upset about what they see as restrictions on free speech. Have you heard that said? Has anybody mentioned that to you?
No, as someone who's been integral to these negotiations, that's not been a material factor. We obviously
Never mentioned. Not a word
not from
about
the
it.
Commerce Department or the Office of US Trade
Okay,
Representative.
useful.
This is from the State Department. But let me just say one more thing, Nick, which is tomorrow is not a deadline. You know, if they take action tomorrow, that is not a reason to walk away from the potential to secure an agreement. This is a time for calm heads. This is a time for pursuing, again, our own national interest to do what British companies, British businesses need us to do, which is to engage and find a way through this. So, of course, I would want any announcement tomorrow to exempt the UK. That stands to reason and is fairly obvious. But I do believe the work we have done has put the UK in a position to secure that national interest.
Forgive me, I'm
to
going
get
to
to
move
an
us on because
agreement.
you have said that. Well, are you worried, because many businesses are, I know, that one consequence of this will be that people were going to send goods to the United States, cheap foreign goods, might think, oh, let's dump them in the British market because they're not putting tariffs on them.
Yes, look, that is always a concern in a trade dispute, which is the impact of diversionary trade, as you say, goods that would have gone elsewhere coming to the UK. So we've already seen tariffs imposed by the US on steel and aluminium, and we already have in place safeguards in the UK to prevent that happening. Quotas and a 25% tariff on certain products and product lines to ensure we're not therefore on the receiving end of the dumping of those goods. And we will always take the action necessary to protect the UK as best as possible, whilst acknowledging there will be an impact from that kind of activity.
The reason this is so worrying, for you particularly as business secretary, but for everybody listening as well, is we know it's a pretty tough time for business, not least today. There's another pressure on business, an increase in the national living wage, which I know you will say is good for people receiving those higher wages, but it's pretty tough for business. And indeed, we heard from one business earlier in the programme, did home care, saying that they cancelled a week's extra leave they gave to their staff because they simply couldn't afford to do it. We heard from another employer running a department store that their staff would get fewer hours as a result. it's not good for business at the moment, is it, Mr. Reynolds?
Oh, look, first of all, 3 million workers getting a pay rise from the national minimum wage. That is good news. People wanted change. They wanted this government elected to deliver change, and they want to be better off. So that's a good thing. Of course, we're aware of the impact that has on business. That's why we had in the budget, for instance, measures on employment allowance, which gives businesses an allowance before they have to pay any national insurance contributions, a substantial doubling, actually, of that allowance. It's why we are committed to reform of things like business rates, to regulation, to planning, to everything that improves that business environment. But also, let's just be clear, what a lot of businesses need, a lot of small businesses need more than anything else, are customers with some money to spend. And they haven't had that in the last few years. So yes, businesses have got to pay the national minimum wage, but they also get customers who earn that national minimum wage.
Yes,
and that's fundamentally important.
They don't if national insurance wipes that out. Now, the Resolution Foundation, which focuses on the impact of tax and other effects on people who are low paid, has issued a report this week in which it says the job losses as a result of the higher cost of national insurance will be concentrated at the bottom of the labour market. They say that it is the low paid who are particularly hit by the way in which the Chancellor structured that increase in national insurance. So there'll be people who lose their jobs, lose pay, lose hours, lose holidays as a result of you increasing national insurance.
Well, the Low Pay Commission, first of all, set the national minimum wage, taking all of these factors into consideration.
No, I'm talking about national insurance.
Of these factors. On national insurance, we know it's an ask of business. We've been absolutely clear about that. We know that there has to be, and there has been, mitigations put in place for that, whether that's the reforms to business rates, whether that's things like employment allowance. But businesses themselves know sometimes you've got to make difficult decisions. The kind of stability every business needs more than anything else, political and economic stability, would not have been there. And 5 months after the budget, I've heard not a single different political party come on a programme like this and say how they would have filled that black hole. What choices would they have made? Ours were, according to our manifesto promises, which were held, to not increase taxes on working people. That's VAT, income tax, employees, national insurance contributions. We know there's an ask of business that had to be made. That's why we're so determined to mitigate that, to improve the business environment overall. And of course, the employment data has held up.
Let's talk about the impact on people now, if we could, because as you know, many people are now looking at their bills. They're seeing council tax go up, they're seeing gas bills go up, electricity bills go up, water bills go up, and there are many other bills that are going up this April as well. Have you done your sums, Secretary of State? Do you know how much your bills are going up?
This time of year, when bills rise, is of course a difficult time. But the things
how
that
much
the
are your
government
bills going up?
I haven't done that calculation myself personally.
Well, very helpfully, we've done it for you. So we can tell you, Secretary of State John Reynolds, we can tell you that your council tax is going up £115. If you pay the average, and you probably don't pay exactly the average, but if you did, on gas and electricity, you'll be paying another £111. And your water bill is going to be going up £155. So John Reynolds' bills, before all the other things that are going up, £381 extra. How does that make you feel?
Look, of course, Nick, these are difficult times, right? We know the last 15 years have been ones of stagnation, have been ones of declining living standards, and putting a change in, delivering on that change, is exactly what this government and our plan for change is about. And the things that we can directly make an impact on to mitigate the impact of those bills are what we're doing. That's the rise to the national minimum wage today.
Can't.
No, it's the triple lock being in place for pensioners. It's freezing fuel duty that makes a difference to everyone. It's putting in those free breakfast clubs with £450 a year to the people who benefit from that.
Well, there's a grand list, but the Citizens' Advice say that it is the poorest that will suffer the most as a result of the increase in bills. The Resolution Foundation says it's the poorest that will suffer the most as a result of rising national insurance. Everyone says it is the poorest that will suffer the most as a result of the cuts the Chancellor's announced to benefits. It's not going all that well, this improving everybody's standard of living thing, is it?
Well, look, first of all, for the first time in a long time, living standards are increasing and wages are rising faster than inflation. That doesn't mean people immediately feel that because of some of these pressures. I accept that. But look, it's the lowest paid who will benefit the most from the rise in the national minimum wage today. It's pensioners who are reliant on the state pension who will benefit the most from the triple lock. It's everyone who has any transport needs or even in the price of the goods and things they buy that benefits from that freeze in fuel duty. It's the lowest paid that will benefit from breakfast clubs was. And it's every one of us who will benefit from those 3 cuts to interest rates that have happened since the election because the economy has been run in a sensible and stable way for the first time in a long time.
Forgive me, just a last brief one, if you would, Mr. Reynolds, which is less political thought, if you like. It's true, isn't it, that what we're seeing from America, and we don't know the detail yet, could make many of the conversations we had last week about the consequence of this or that forecast in the spring statement redundant. This is arguably the most serious thing to happen to the British economy since the general election, isn't it?
It's a very serious and significant moment, and that is why we have been so resolute in pursuing our national interest, in putting the UK in the best place of any country to try and navigate some of these pressures, to make a difference in a way which not only mitigates the impact on the UK, but does so in a way which actually improves our terms of trade with such a significant market, and the US will always be a significant trading market. So this
and
is
would you advise
a
exporters who are thinking, shall we hang on just for a week or two? Because the Secretary of State sounded quite positive today. Should we hang on? Should they hang on?
Look, businesses themselves, Nick, they tell us they support the calm-headed pursuit of our national interest.
That's a different answer to a different question.
And want to see us stay at the table.
Should they hang on before sending something to America just in case you get a deal?
Look, I can tell them that. The work we have done has put the UK in a difficult situation, in the best possible position. They've got to make decisions that are right for their business, but they do support our approach and they do see what we're trying to do, and that is what a strong response is about, pursuing the UK national interest.
Jonathan Reynolds, Business Secretary, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, don't forget to do so. And also, please do comment below. Let me know what you think.